This sense of me is really remarkable. It's so mysterious, and it seems like it's this whole body energetic contraction that can start really early on. Maybe it could seem like if there's earlier trauma than or a happening that was really like jolting, the contraction can intensify at an earlier age, maybe. At least that's kind of what's seen maybe to have happened. Yeah, with children who have had more difficulties. It does kind of seem like here there wasn't that much, too much shocking stuff that happened before the age of 8 or 10, and memory around that time is almost non existent. It seems like the me sense was relatively weak, but I don't know for sure. And this me sense is the story. It is this central identity that has a life, that is living a life, that is making choices, and it's moving through time and space. And all the happenings is happening to it. And it puts it in its timeline, and there's progression, there's aging and ownership of the body, claiming of decisions and choices that really the body and the mind are just apparently making. I mean, I don't know what the mind is. This thing we call the brain is just automatically making these decisions or not making these choices, and it's claimed by this sense of me, this I did that, I decided not to do that, I don't like that, I like that, I want that, I hate that, I'm so proud of myself, I made a mistake, I feel guilty, I'm amazing, I really fucked up, I feel shameful, I triumphed, I am a warrior, I am God. So the me is the story. The me is time. The me is ownership of life, of my life. And there are 7 or 8 billion me's. Living a very unique life, owning their own world and universe. It's revolving around them. They are the center. And it's automatic. We can't help but feel that way. The world is revolving around you, the me. And it's like remarkable. It's mysterious. It's unknown. It's this. So a me that's, let's say, on a spiritual journey that's trying to get to this, get to already what is illusory, and it won't get anywhere. It won't really get to already this. But it feels like that. It feels really real. So I'm not saying that, doing spiritual practices that seem to relax the body, that seem to produce more peace, a sense of relaxation, perhaps more letting go, surrendering. That it feels like the me is doing that the me is creating that, and it owns that experience, it owns that state. And it's so convincing, but all of that movement I just described is not really happening. Because it's already just this, only this, already. Already whole and complete. And within that, there can be this illusory sense of separation that is doing something, that is getting somewhere, that is becoming more spiritual, more awake. This radical and uncompromising message is not speaking to that which feels is moving through time, that is living a life, that is making progression. This message is saying that what is this unconditional pure, vibrant aliveness, life itself, this indescribable, unknowable mystery is just what is. It can't be gotten to. It can't be, no one can get closer to it. That sense of someone is this. No one can escape it. But in the story, it can feel as if this message can be sorely misinterpreted in a vast variety of ways. So it can feel like this is bypassing, like you're just dismissing everything, and it can feel nihilistic. That's totally possible. It's likely, can be likely. And there's nothing right or wrong with that. That's just how it's being interpreted by the me sense. There's a preference here to attempt to clear the air and say that this message isn't directed toward the me. The me can't understand it, can't grab it, can't get to it, can't become more of anything. It can really appear and feel that way. And I'm not denying that. I'm saying that can feel very, very real. But it's an illusory sense that claims and owns everything. And it's remarkable. And the me can't try to not feel that way. And that even if the me tries to stop the seeking, stop itself, that itself is seeking. So in a way, the seeking will continue as long as it continues. The story will continue as long as it continues. Apparently, it's not really happening. It is this illusory sense that really feels like there is a story and progression, and all of that is this. There is no escape. This is not an escape. This message is not talking to an entity that can get closer or further away from already this. Full on crying, full on life, full on everything. This is everything. Nothing is excluded. Everything is included. The utter vastness, the boundlessness is uncomprehensible, incomprehensible, not understandable. The story will end when it ends. The apparent journey that's not really happening will end when it ends. And if it ends, this apparent movement still happens. It can still be described as a story that's happening. You know? Like things can still arise, still happen, and they all do. The conditioning relatively still continues. Like a lot can fall away and a lot can apparently change. Things do feel a lot lighter. They're not owned and claimed by anyone. It's not happening to anyone. The conditioning isn't owned by anyone. Decisions and choices are just what's happening, and sometimes it's not even really noticed so much. It's just what's apparently unfolding, what's apparently happening. But this isn't a fix-all. Like, in a way, yes, there are no problems because it's just what's happening. And even if there is a judgment toward, this is good and no, this is causing a lot of anxiety, that story, that narrative can still arise, but it's not really that believed in. No one is really owning what's happening. It's just what's happening. So there really isn't a problem in a sense. And it seems like it's taken care of on its own, because that's kind of what was happening before. Obviously, it depends, and obviously, I don't know. Obviously, this is just a description that there really is no point to this. It seems fun to describe. But yeah, it seems like before this apparent happening, before this apparent dropping away, there was a conditioning that was played out, and the person took ownership of it and said, I need to change this. I feel guilty, or I need to become better. Then maybe apparent change happened, and then it was like, I'm so proud of myself. I am great. Or there could be a falling again into old patterns, and then there could be some self-hatred, a lot of judgment. I should have changed by now. Why is this still happening? So all of that is like an after effect, this ownership and claiming of this apparent conditioning that is just the way it is. And it's seen now that the conditioning here is similar. It's lighter. It's not owned by anyone, but it's still playing out the way it kind of played out before. But now it's seen that the apparent changes just happen on their own. No one needs to reprimand themselves in order for that change to happen. No one needs to feel like they achieved something in order to encourage themselves to change, continue to change, or keep being on a spiritual path. Or no one needs to feel bad if the conditioning doesn't really change. The thing is, the body and the brain is programmed and conditioned a certain way, to act a certain way, to make certain decisions. And I'm not saying that doesn't change. Obviously, influences change, and everything apparently changes. The appearance of things, all of it just changes. There's no predicting anything. There's no knowing anything. Nothing can be really grasped, even though it feels like things can really be known and solidified. It's like a belief, I guess. So it's just seen that the conditioning that arises here, there could still be like the story and narrative of like, oh, I should be better, I want to change this. That's just what is. It's just a thought. It's just an intense emotion, and it apparently unfolds the way it unfolds. And it does seem like there is a lightness to everything, and no one is really owning and claiming any of it. So it's, in a way, it seems more allowed to just play out the way it's going to play out. I don't know if that sounded super confusing. But in a sense, like, things stay the same in the sense that the conditioning doesn't change drastically. Like, the body and the brain doesn't all of a sudden become a clean slate or something like that. It is just the illusory after effect that falls away. The neuroses. The I need to be this way. I need to be perceived this way. I need to act this way. I want to be this way. So things like that is a lot lighter. Out of habit, maybe that those thoughts can still arise, but they are meaningless. They're not for anyone. And this is not perfection. This is not an escape for the person. The person never gets this. The person is never here to experience the absence of itself. It's impossible. The person can't make this happen. The person can really want this, especially if you're on a spiritual path and really highly regard enlightenment and awakening, or seeing no self. This can really be wanted. But sorry to disappoint, no one achieves this. No one is here to really get what they've always dreamed of. And it could feel really devastating. It could be a real bummer. whether there's a me sense, whether the me sense drops, there can still be a sense of heartbreak. And even though no one had anything, but that illusory sense of self really felt like it had a lot of stuff, its whole life, relationships, things it was really good at. The loss can feel immense. The heartbreak can feel really real. Because that illusory sense felt very real. To the me, that's all it knows. It knows that it is. It really feels I am, I exist, I'm here. And therefore, everyone else exists. Everyone else is real. I am in relation to everything, everyone, myself included. That's remarkable. It's a fucking mystery. And there's nothing right or wrong with it. It can actually be very devastating to see that nothing was ever owned, nothing was ever mine. My life didn't really exist. I never really existed. Isn't that the greatest heartbreak? Isn't that the ultimate freedom? There is no freedom. It's just a word. I mean, maybe there's just freedom. There's no freedom for anyone. No one gets free. There's just freedom, and it's always just been freedom. No matter what it looked like or appeared as, it's just this wholeness, unconditioned, whole and complete the whole time, appearing separate. All of these individual stories and universes and lives, and yet the whole time it was just undefinable, unknowable freedom. Oh my God. How is that possible? No one knows. No one knows what's going on. No one knows why. So here there was a sense like, why not, as long as the me sense is here and it feels real, even though it's illusory, why not just enjoy life? Why not just do what I want to do? Because what other option is there? You can fight the me can fight itself, the seeking can try to stop the seeking, but it is futile. That is seeking itself. That is seeking. Stopping, trying to stop the seeking is seeking. And maybe that could be fun for a while. But it is all futile. It's just this. It's already just this. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing is happening. No one's going to get anything. That sense of not feeling enough, not feeling whole, not feeling complete is this. It can feel frustrating as hell. That's this. The apparent journey will end when it ends. There is no saying when, there is no saying why, there is no predicting, there is no cause and effect, there's no progression, there is no time. But it feels really real. As long as it feels really real, that's this. This is not saying to stop doing. No. Continue on with life, even though it's apparent. No one is living a life, but why not just continue and enjoy? Because this cannot be forced. The me can't do this. The me can't undo itself. The me can't see beyond itself or experience the absence of itself or get rid of itself. So really, there is no difference between the me being on a spiritual path and doing certain spiritual practices. That's this. There's a preference here to say that relaxing the body, if there's trauma and a lot of triggering, why not attempt to decrease that if there's pain? That's just what's happening. I mean, the body doesn't prefer to constantly be triggered, and so why not? Why not do the things that relax the body? Because that apparently can still happen here. Relaxing music or fun music and dancing or walking in nature, talking to someone, eating delicious food, watching some fun stuff, some stand-ups. That can all happen. Having a bit of wine, wanting the body to feel good. That can still happen. Like, that's a preference. So why not? Why not relax the body if it feels good? No one would be doing that, even if it feels like someone is doing that. Even if it feels like someone is meditating to relax the body or someone is trying to surrender, which is not really possible. So what? I mean, though, I think the main caveat to that would be that if you're on a spiritual path, it can become a burden in the sense that I am doing this in order to get to enlightenment, to awakening, to freedom, to liberation. So it becomes a goal, it becomes this backpack that will get me somewhere. I'm actually moving closer to this thing called enlightenment. But it's part of the dream that is fantasy. And it can feel really good for the spiritual seeker. I'm not saying to stop doing that. There is no preference. There's a seeing that there's nothing right or wrong with being on a spiritual path. Really. I mean, if this message resonates a lot, then there could be a falling away of practices and when something is directed toward the me, it might not resonate anymore. So, I mean, that can happen. All sorts of things can happen. But if there is this sense of me and the body is really triggered, or it's in fear, or there's anxiety, there's a wanting to say here that that's just what is. That's just what's happening. There's nothing right or wrong with it. And anxiety can arise here. Everything arises without the me sense. Everything arises because the me was never doing a lot of that stuff. Like, this illusory sense can create more neuroses, but anxiety still arises, fear still arises, fear of death. The body fears death. Maybe the psychological fear is a lot less, or it gets lighter over apparent time. Everything still arises. It's just not owned and claimed by anyone. It's not happening to anyone. So there are differences. There are differences in the apparent before and after. There's an underlying or infused neutrality to everything and anything because it's not happening to anyone. I would probably say, when I say I, it's not referring to anything, but it's still being said. I would probably prefer it without the me. But even with that, there's a neutrality. There is really a seeing that it doesn't really matter if the me is there or not, because it's seen that there is a magnificent beauty in this mysterious me energy that creates the story, that creates its own life and universe and world. And there was heartbreak. There was heartbreak of this illusory life that Suzanne had and the apparent disappearance of that. And probably, the heartbreak will continue. There is no time, so it's not really going to continue, and there's no like forecasting what will happen in the future. And but like those little things of what was never had but feels like it was lost can still happen. And there's a beauty to that too. All of it is so mysteriously, it's haunting. It's so beautiful. All of it is really haunting. And this is just an expression of this apparent character that doesn't really exist. Because nothing is happening. I refer to the character, but it's all just like programming, conditioning of this body and brain that doesn't really, it's also nothing. So there's a wanting to say, like, again, the I, it's not referring to anything. There's no one here. And it doesn't, I guess, resonate, or it's not pointing to anything. So I can be said, it has no meaning or power behind it. But I wouldn't change anything in the parent story. All of the trauma, all of the hating of oneself, all of the trying to heal oneself, trying to feel better, failing, succeeding, moving on, falling back, feeling reborn, feeling like I'm in hell, feeling like I rose up into heaven, feeling like I awakened, feeling like this is it. This still isn't enough. And then finding this message and feeling devastated that all of that seeking was to get to something that cannot be gotten to. I wouldn't change any of it. And no one is saying that. It's just being said. And I kind of see, like, the me would not say that. I mean, maybe the person here did have this sense of gratitude. You know, it was part of her spiritual path, and she was really grateful for life and everything that had happened and everything that was happening, and seeing that all of the most negative and traumatizing things became the most transformative, because it was the most painful. The most suffering came out of it, and that propelled an apparent change because it was so horrific. You know, and that's all a belief. It's all a concept. It's not. It's beautiful in the story that immense amount of suffering created this, like, fierceness, this capacity to feel such immense sadness. And it felt horrific at times. But I wouldn't change any of it. So to speak, it doesn't even make sense saying that. Like, it doesn't mean anything when that's said, but it's said. There isn't even really a gratitude for life and everything that happened and how it unfolded. All of that becomes very neutral and meaningless. So there's no more real meaning and value to anything. And there's no more real meaninglessness and devaluing of other things. You know, like, the polar opposites are so ephemeral. They're they have no gravity. It's just like the meaning behind them is gone in a sense, yet certain things can still be said. Because it's fun, because it's just being said out of habit, out of conditioning. Like, who knows? So, like, relaxing the body more, feeling more at peace, loving oneself more, seeing others as yourself, whatever it might be, that's beautiful. It can seemingly make physiological changes in the brain and the body. It can relax the system. And why not? It's preferred to feel better. Still here, it's preferred to feel better. I would rather feel relaxed. No one would feel that way, but it's just a sense of relaxation for no one. So why not? It's just not gonna there is no promise to the me will fall away once the body is relaxed, more at peace. There is no guarantee. How can an illusory sense of me bring about a surrender? That's either going to happen or not. How would an illusory sense of me bring on its own surrender? Even this is a story, but it seems like, at least here, since there was an intense spiritual seeker who wanted enlightenment more than anything, I think. I mean, she didn't know what enlightenment was, but yeah, in a sense, it was like, I know I want freedom more than anything, whatever that was. So there was an immense trying. No one was trying. It felt like Suzanne was really trying, but the seeking was very intense. And then at a certain point, it was more mellow, but very devotional and full on dedicated to God, to her teacher, to this path that she didn't know what the end was. And even if there was an end, but it just felt right in the moment. So there was this intensity of wanting this more than anything. And did that exhaust the seeking energy? Perhaps. I don't know. I can't say anything for sure. There's no one here that knows anything. No one knows anything. No one can say anything for sure. The story will end when it ends. The journey will end when it ends. There was no one here knowing if the me would fall away or not. So that's why sometimes I can encourage, whatever questions there might be or confusions or like ask it. There's nothing right or wrong with it. Even though it's said often here that it won't get you to anything. And that this can't be understood and, there's no point to this message. And so there could still be encouragement to ask it. It doesn't mean that the me will then fall away. There might just be less confusion. There might just be less pain. Is that a more preferred thing here? Yeah. I don't prefer to see more pain and suffering. There is just a preference here to alleviate that. Doesn't mean like completely get rid of it or like it's anyone's duty or things like that. It's just a preference here and things are said and that's just apparently how it's unfolding. There's this caring for these apparent organisms. So there's no one there that needs to be fixed or needs to heal, that is broken. And that doesn't mean that if there's a sense of me, there can't be an attempt to heal or feel more relaxed or try to understand oneself. Really, you're just, the illusory sense of me is trying to understand the conditioning. Like trying to unpack the apparent experiences in its own life and seeing how the programming and conditioning is affecting it. But it's all part of the me. When it's seen that way, when it's seen as an ownership, when it's seen as my choices and decisions, my life and experiences, my what happened to me and how I can grow from it or learn from it and become better because of it. That's all beautiful. And in a sense, that can apparently continue after the me falls away. It's just that no one is doing it. So it's just this apparent conditioning that's playing out. Then maybe a thought that says I should change that because the body is triggered or in pain. So this is just a description. It's not really happening. It's seen that it's not happening to anyone. Nothing is owned. It's just boundless energy. It's just what is. This apparent sight, the thought, the emotion, the space, the hand, the tree, the windows. It's all just what is. There is no boundary. Nothing's happening to anyone. No one is experiencing anything. You see how this is impossible to describe? So when apparent other speakers are saying like nothing is happening, or it's just what's happening, that is almost the clearest description that can be given. This is just what is. Just this. No separation, even the sense of separation. Everything that is apparently perceived, the trees and, everything, the objects, the hand, the looking at the computer, it's just this. It's not happening to anyone. No one is experiencing it. So it can be confusing and misleading when I constantly say the conditioning apparently continues and this apparent learning and growth still seems to continue, but it's not owned by anyone. No one is doing it. So that's just a description of what is. Nothing is happening. The character doesn't really exist. The character is a word. The word character is just referring to something that also is not really real. Oh God, this could really sound really dismissive. This can sound like sometimes a denial, but it actually isn't. It's actually almost it's so utterly inclusive that it includes all of the misinterpretation, all of the denial and dismissal and the confusion and the worry, the anxiety, the hope, the hopelessness, the meaning, the beliefs, the values, the person, the me, separation. It's so inclusive of it all. It's just what is. It's all of it. It's not negating anything. It's not dismissing anything. Because it can't be. Nothing can be dismissed. And really, without the sense of me, it's so full on just this thing we call an emotion, a sensation, energy, this thing we call a thought, a belief, a value, a preference, energy, totally boundless, unknown, mysterious. It's not negating anything. It's full on aliveness, utter it's really like an explosion of life. So vibrant, more immediate than immediate. Just what is.